When a cherished spiritual leader falls morally, that rocks the world of a lot of people. It causes people to have questions. It causes people to wonder maybe if the messenger was not authentic, the message is false too. On today's edition of Truth for a New Generation, we're going to talk about the connection between the behavior of religious leaders and the authenticity of the message of God's Word. Stay tuned to this edition of Truth for a New Generation. Hi, Alex McFarland here. Welcome to Truth for a New Generation. You know, in 1993, a significant archaeological discovery was unearthed in northern Israel in a place called Tel Dan. There was an inscription on a rock that referenced the house of David, literally the dynasty of David. King David, Israel's greatest king, beloved figure. This is important because for years, skeptics said that maybe King David, with all of his greatness and accomplishments, maybe David never existed because there was not, prior to 1993, as far as anybody knew, there was not an outside archaeological confirmation of King David. So when the inscription was found there in northern Israel, it was very important because skeptics had said, give us proof of the life and the dynasty and the accomplishments of King David. And lo and behold, as archaeology so often has done, the proof was found. The proof was unearthed. Now, why am I telling you that right now? I'm talking about this because while I believe there's great evidence for the truth of the Bible, I believe that outside objective evidence from history, science, archaeology, from a number of vantage points, the authenticity of the Bible has been proven and underscored, corroborated, validated. The Bible is true. But do you know what the reality is? The reality is that so many people in this world, they're not looking for data, but they judge or they adjudicate the validity of God, the authenticity of Scripture, perhaps, by the life of Christians. D.L. Moody, I've shared this quote many times, the great leader from the 19th century. Moody said, out of 100 people, one might read the Bible, but 99 would read the Christian. Now, the reason I'm telling you that is because recently in Christian circles, there was a very famous leader, Ravi Zacharias. And Ravi spoke for us in our conferences. For 20 years ago plus, I first met Ravi. And I want to talk, and I want you to listen to the entirety of this program, because since his death in early 2020, a number of allegations have come out, and even the legal firm that his ministry hired to investigate these claims said many of these things, very, very damning allegations about behavior and activities. Even the legal firm that the ministry had hired to clear Ravi's name said, look, hey, where there's smoke, there's fire. Now, I've gotten emails from atheists and people that we hosted debates, we hosted conferences, and a lot of non-believers have said, aha, the man's life was not entirely true, therefore his message was false also. Even Christians have emailed me. I've got emails right now, and they're like, oh my goodness, Ravi Zacharias, he defended Christianity. I cherished this guy's books. He was somebody I really looked up to, and maybe since he was living a double life, what if Christianity is not true as well? Hey, let me just say this right now. While it is vital that a Christian leader, if we talk it, we better walk it. Our life, our actions, our heart, our priorities should match our message. If we have got an authentic message, and we do, we need to be authentic messengers. But I want to say this, even if every Christian fell, that would not negate the reality of Christ. And let me just say to those that are hurt and wounded and heartbroken when a beloved leader falls, or you find out after someone's gone, some very heartbreaking revelations. Look, a Christian might let you down. Jesus Christ never will. I prayed to God that I would never disappoint you. But look, don't put your eyes on Alex McFarland, because the state of your soul and the reality of the good Lord and his word, it's not contingent on Alex McFarland, heaven forbid. But I want to say this, for those of us that name the name of Christ, if we talk it, we better live it. Now, if you've got hurt and you've got pain from somebody that let you down, later in the show, we're going to talk about how you get past that, how you forgive someone who's hurt you or someone that you put great stock in and they turned out to be not exactly what you thought. So stay tuned. When we come back on Truth for New Generation, we're going to have a great conversation about this and other things with our friend Odell Cleveland. Don't go away.
I just returned from a conference at the Cove, and it was absolutely breathtaking in every way. The mountain views, the tranquil areas within the woods, and just being alone with God. Mornings spent watching the sunrise from a rocking chair with coffee in one hand and my Bible in the other. Evenings spent reflecting on the incredible spiritual teaching. It's the embodiment of peacefulness. Come and experience the Cove for yourself.
Welcome back to Truth for New Generation. So honored that you're watching, and we're talking about the relationship between the character of the messenger and the truth of the message. I'm so glad I've got with me here on set my dear friend and brother, Odell Cleveland. And, you know, Odell, I love to learn from you and hear your wisdom, but I'm excited. I want to make people aware of the podcast you and I do. And, hey, you know, it's just so great to talk about things, culture, the state of the country. And the podcast you and I do is called I Hear Ya. And folks, you can find Odell and Alex wherever you listen to podcasts and get that digital content. But it's called I Hear Ya. And I think God's hand is in that. I think it's going to touch a lot of lives, don't you?
Oh, definitely, Alex. And again, with everything going on in society today, I think for the audience to come and get a fresh, honest opinion of two different perspectives, yours and mine, from a white preacher, a black preacher, telling the truth. Yeah. Telling the truth, but respectfully telling the truth. So I welcome everyone to come in and, you know, we have to have some place to hash out everything that's going on, because if we don't, then how do we move forward? Exactly.
And I appreciate you so much. And as you and I have gotten to know each other, I mean, you're a Christian, you're a husband, you're a minister, you're a leader, and I'm learning a lot about leadership just by watching and listening to you. But you're an educator as well. And in any of those realms, there's got to be a leadership quality where the character goes with the content.
Yes.
Let's talk about church, because that's where you and I spend a lot of our life. What does it do to the sheep if it turns out the shepherd was a fraud?
You know, it's interesting that the Bible talks about that. The shepherd, the sheep, needs to understand that we're all part of the same group. So when we take the pastor, him or her, and put them on a pedestal and try to put them to the fact that they're above falling, they're above sinning, they're above all this, then that's part of the problem. I look at it like this. I know that I have issues, meaning that, God, thank you for your grace and mercy. God, thank you for allowing Odell to be not perfect, but he's not what he used to be. I know I have temptation, so I'm very much aware of my things that tempt me. So the things that tempt me, things that I liked before I got saved, the things that I endeavored in before I got saved, I have to stay away from them, whether I'm a follower or a leader. And I think being a leader, meaning that you have to have people around you, Alex, that will hold you accountable. Amen. The worst thing a leader can do is have yes people around him or her who won't hold them and challenge them. And that's where leaders get more tripped up, especially in the Bible, especially in Christianity, especially when folks like, well, he or she's the pastor, so whatever they say is fine, because Christianity is not a groupie sport. Christianity is not a cult. We have to hold each other accountable. You have to hold me accountable. I have to hold you accountable. And if you said, Odell, you're a husband. Well, I have obligations to my wife. Odell, you're a father. I have obligations to my children. Odell, you're a grandfather. I have obligations to my and I'm blessed to be number 2 in charge of a very, very, very large African-American church. Well, not African-American church, it's God's church, but
sure,
it's 99.999999999% African-American, okay?
Okay.
So it's God's church, but it's 99.99. Now, we have a budget of about $7 million. Wow. That's a lot of money. So now all of a sudden, what happened if Odell's a thief? So now you have a thief mining the money. So, that's the way I have to look at it. So I'm like, God, you have anointed me. You have blessed me. You've taken me from public housing in Charleston, South Carolina to be in this position. And I understand, Alex, that I'm in a very powerful and influential position, but I won't always be in that position. Yeah. So we can't act like we're little gods in leadership. Yeah. And since God put us in that position, God can take us out of that position.
Oh, man, preach it.
We owe an awesome responsibility to everybody who gave their tithes, their offerings, whether it's a dime or whether it's $1 million. We have to hold ourselves accountable. And in those areas that we know we're weak, we have to bring people in to make sure. I say, Alex, now I have a problem with apple pie, so keep an eye on me when I'm around apples or pies, or even a pie maker. Because see, a lot of times it's the pie maker in the skirts or in the aprons that get you and I in trouble.
Well, yeah, and with higher and higher levels of leadership really comes more accountability, not less. Isn't that true?
Definitely. And understand that if you're in a position that no one's good at everything. Yeah. So he or she, the pastor, is like, well, I'm the pastor. I know everything. Case in point, if before I got saved, I had an issue with women. Okay, let's just say that. Just for the audience, this is just a scenario, is an example.
Completely hypothetical.
Thank you. Have to put all those in there. And now a woman comes to me and says, I'm having marital problems with my husband. I'm having sexual problems with my husband. Why would I sit and listen to that knowing that those are buttons that I can't handle? So now all of a sudden, it goes from, I'm your pastor, I'm counseling you, to now all of a sudden, I'm getting involved in my head, in my spirit, in my mind, in my flesh.
Emotional affair.
All day long. And then it goes from that to now all of a sudden, well, come on over to my office and let's talk after hours. Yeah. I mean, Stevie Wonder could see where that's going. So who's going to protect me? Who's going to say, Odell, listen, man, you can't do that. Who's going to step up and say, Pastor, I'm not insinuating anything, but that doesn't look good. Yeah. And the Bible talks about, just stay away from it.
Avoid the very appearance of evil.
Right, but how, especially mega pastors, we get strong and mighty. Who steps up to us? And one of the best things, in my opinion, that God has blessed me with is a strong wife.
Amen.
She's my number 1 cheerleader, but boy, she's my number 1 critic. Yeah. And sometimes it's like she's more of a critic than a cheerleader, but I thank God for her because she keeps me in check. And it's like when you come home, you're not a pastor, you're not a leader, you're not this.
You're not
take out that garbage. Take out that garbage, do those things. And sometimes you're like, yeah, but it's just, you just have to have good people around you because the devil is busy. The devil will trip us up, and we understand through temptations. So this is just a good subject for me because so many of us fall when we don't have to fall.
Exactly. And, I heard an old saying that the reputation of years can be lost by the conduct of a moment.
Yeah.
That's true, isn't it? Let's talk about, handling money. We're accountable to God. Handling money, handling ourselves morally. We're not to get involved in sexual sin. But let's talk about this valuable resource called the fellowship of people. I think that we may not realize how much people look at us and hang on us. And it's unfortunate because I've had people write to me and they'll say, well, this or that preacher did wrong, therefore I'm going to walk away from God. I've had people with this thing with Ravi Zacharias in the world of apologetics. I mean, here's a man defending the faith, and the dude could talk, man. He was articulate. And now that he's gone, there's a lot of very, very unfortunate things coming out about him. And some skeptics and even some Christians are saying, aha, see, that Bible never was true. Look at that. That guy was crooked. Even if every Christian fell, that would not erase the reality of Christ. But the world doesn't always know that, do they?
No, not at all. However, let's be honest and truthful. If we fall, we fell.
Yeah.
If we deceive people, we deceive people. If we cheated on our wife, we cheated on our wife. If we stole the church money, we did. I'm on the board of the Boy Scouts, and we're wrestling with what happened there. And the key of sometimes what happened there was some knew, not all, some knew of the sin and decided that we're going to have a way of fixing it. Just like in church, sometimes some knew of the sin of the pastor, he or she, and we're going to find a way to manage it. We're going to fix it. We're going to manage it. You can't manage something when you're hiding it up and it's a big secret.
Yeah.
Now, the bad thing about it, and I don't want to pile on to the gentleman, but the bad thing about it, a lot of it comes out once people are no longer here. Now, God has forgiveness.
Yeah.
Sometimes as Christians, we don't. So it's better, in my opinion, that let's not leave our wounded on the battlefield.
Yeah.
If we fall, do we have enough humanity and humility within ourselves to say, you know what, I need to step away. There's some things going on in my life, me and my family, we need to work on. And if I'm honest enough to say that, will my deacons, will my trustees, will the leadership work with me or allow me, or do the leadership is the one who put the last nail in the coffin and says, Odell, since you're not perfect, my friend, we no longer have need of you.
I've heard it said that Christians are a group that shoots their wounded. And while I want to be very clear that, look, if we preach it, we better live it.
Yes.
If we represent the Lord, we need to be godly. But at the same time, Christianity is redemptive.
Yes.
And when people are broken, wounded, maybe even by their own bad decisions, that's the time that we need to come along and love them. And, you know, the Bible uses, I love how the old King James says, restore such a one. Taking heed for ourselves, because it could have been us that fell.
Yes, but we still, yes, however, as leaders, we hold to a higher level of accountability. And sometimes we need to just sit down. We need to vacate our position. Because what's very hard in Christianity and in any type of leadership, I came out of corporate America before I, got into the ministry. When you mess up, that's one thing. When you have a history of repeating offenses, now that's different. You need to go get some help. And it's like, well, I know I'm wrong, but I'm gonna have a group of people who are gonna fight with me that I'm wrong. However, let's look at Alex. The Bible talks about, don't judge me. Look at Alex. Alex has on a blue shirt. Yeah, I know I have on a good-looking black shirt, but Alex have on a blue shirt. So we will reflect our sin on someone else. And then we have enough people around us to say, yeah, you're right. You know what, man, we don't like Alex. He's a blue shirt wearer. That's what gets us in trouble. Because when I sit down and I think about as Christians and leaders, we will destroy our leaders. But sometimes our leaders destroy themselves and the leaders destroy other people. Because in that scenario that I had, if the young ladies come into me for counseling, marriage counseling, this and that, what is that going to do when I'm having an affair with her that turned into counseling? And now, even more, I know more about her and her husband. So how does that make the husband feel as a man when another man know more about what's going on in his household, in his bedroom, and everything else than I should know? So I think it's boundaries. As leaders, it's boundaries. We should have boundaries in what we do and what we say and how we respond. And I think sometimes our flesh, our human nature get in the way.
We got a couple of minutes left. Let me ask you this. What do you say to the person who's maybe been disappointed in somebody? Maybe it's not some heinous sin, but even just a relationship that kind of got sideways. How do we overcome a disappointment and begin to build bridges back?
Well, a lot of people get hurt in the church. I think the church, the mosque, the temple, the synagogue, people get hurt all the time for a couple of reasons. A lot of times because as Christians or people of faith, we could be mean. we can be mean and nasty sometimes.
Sad.
We just could be mean, nasty, territorial. So that's one of the ways.
Bad.
But also in the fact that we have unrealistic expectations. I remember I call it a baby Christian. When I first got saved, I remember I came in and I'm just thinking that, oh my God, I'm in heaven, utopia and everything. And it wasn't hard for me to find out that, okay, some of the stuff that I see going on inside the church is what I saw going on outside of the church.
And maybe worse.
Well, and then when I went to get my master's divinity degree, I remember hearing the quote unquote preachers talk when nobody was around. And I'm like, So at the same time, I think that if we look at it like he or she is human, we're not judging them, but only God. And when I do get hurt, first, I go back to that person who hurt me and share with them if they're willing to hear. And then I also share with God. And I think God can help us.
Amen.
The Holy Spirit can help us with our hurt. But it's no kind of hurt like church hurt.
That is true. And folks, you're listening to the wisdom of Odell Cleveland, my brother, colleague, and friend. He's also my co-host on the podcast, I Hear Ya. And it's great to have you on the TV, and it's good to be able to do the podcast together. And by the way, the I Hear Ya podcast, where you can get more of Odell and our conversations together, it's wherever you listen to podcasts and digital audio content. But when we come back, we're going to talk about forgiving those that have hurt you, and even when a cherished leader has turned out to be less than you thought, how to keep your eyes on God and thrive even in the midst of hurt. Stay tuned.
We live in an ever-changing culture that continues to fall away from its moral foundations. The AFA Journal provides a Christian perspective on current issues that are important to your family. Produced by the American Family Association, this monthly magazine is full of articles and stories about people who are making a difference in their community and around the world. Sign up today and receive a free 6-month subscription. Visit afajournal.org or call 1-800-326-4543.
In Christian circles, sometimes when you're talking about missions and evangelism, you'll hear people say the world is only one generation away from paganism, meaning that if the faith isn't passed on, the world could very quickly, very easily lapse back into darkness and lack of knowledge about God. Hi, welcome to Truth for New Generation. Alex McFarland here. To summarize our conversation with Odell Cleveland and the relationship between the truth of the message, the perceived validity of the Bible, and the integrity in the life of the messenger. Let's kind of draw a conclusion to some of these thoughts. Speaking of passing the faith on and showing the watching world that this is credible and worth believing, a website recently published a list of reasons that 20-somethings and younger have rejected the church or don't believe in God. And there were different answers. One was there's no evidence that God exists. I disagree with that. But overwhelmingly, the number one reasons that millennials and younger are rejecting God or walking away from the church relates to negative experiences with professed Christians. Isn't that sad? And again, the message of the gospel, I believe, is true. I believe it is objectively true, defensible. But sadly, when a Christian is behaving badly, many people in their mind, they just conclude, well, this must be false. It must be wrong. It's not relevant to me. Goodbye. I walk away. 1 Peter 3:15, very famous verse related to apologetics in the New Testament. Be ready to give an answer for the reason for the hope that you have. And in the Greek, that's the word apologia for apologetics. 1 Peter 3:15, defending the faith. But 1 Peter 2:15, let's remember that verse. 1 Peter 2:15 says, this is the will of God, that by doing well, you will put to silence the arguments of the unbelieving world. Okay, 1 Peter 3:15 says we can do apologetics, but 1 Peter 2:15, by your life of integrity and authenticity, you yourself are an apologetic. What do you do when a cherished leader turns out to be something other than what they preached or professed? Well, for one thing, don't conclude that God isn't real or the Bible isn't true. Listen, even if every Christian were perfect, that wouldn't make the Bible more true. And if every Christian fell, that wouldn't make the Bible less true. When people hurt you, you need to be able to forgive them. And let me just quote a quote that I love. Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers, said, "There's nobody you couldn't love if you only heard their story." Do you know what? Shortly before he died, my dad, he's in heaven. I love my dad, no problem. But my dad looked at me one day, he said, "You are nothing but a big dumb ape." That was not what I wanted to hear in one of my final conversations with my dad. But you know what? Forgiveness means relinquishing the right to get even. If you're sad over allegations about Ravi, or anybody who let you down, and in your mind it wasn't what I thought they should do, or they weren't who I wish they would be, listen, just remember, God has shown each of us grace. God has shown you grace. God has shown me grace. And we who have loved should show love. I'm not saying not hold people accountable, but listen, always be quick to give or receive an olive branch. And let's just remember, people are people. People, they'll do you right, they'll do you wrong, but God is always faithful. So let's keep our eyes and our attention always on Him.
What is truth?
What is truth? Shabam! There it is, the big kahuna, the spicy enchilada, the fizzy lifting drink.
The claim God exists is not a subjective claim.
This is not an evidence problem.
So, like, truth is basically subjective.
Yeah, emotional.
This is Debunk TV.
I want to thank you for watching Truth for a New Generation, and I really appreciate all the correspondence and the emails we get. You know, you can go to my website, alexmcfarland.com, and you can follow my speaking schedule where I'm going to be around the country. And we also have a lot of questions and answers there that you can search through. And we just appreciate your interest in the broadcast, the publishing, the events, and this ministry. And you know, while the gospel message is free, the love of God, that message is free. It does take resources to deliver that message, and so we appreciate your financial support. Do you know, your tax-deductible gifts to Truth for a New Generation are enabling us to do so many things, and we're growing, and we have such a vision for the future of the lives of people we want to touch, especially young people. And I'll talk to you more about some of our very ambitious present and future endeavors. But right now, I want to ask you to consider supporting what we're doing. Now, for your gift of at least $50, I want to send you 2 books. My book, 10 Answers for Skeptics, and my other book, The God You Thought You Knew. I interviewed more than 36 atheists. I interviewed more than 300 college students. So we're going to talk about how you can answer tough questions, how you can pass the faith on to young people, and really people of all ages. These 2 books for your gift of at least $50. If you'll include an extra $25, make it a gift of $75, you get the awesome Truth for a New Generation Apologetics t-shirt. Better Living Through Apologetics. And then it's got the Truth for a New Generation logo on the back, TNG, your gift of at least $75, and you get the books and the shirt. And of course, check out my new book online, The Assault on America, How to Defend Our Nation. I want to thank you for watching. Keep us in prayer. Know that we're praying for you. We love to hear from you. And thank you for being a part of today's edition of Truth for a New Generation.